What if the thing you saw in the mirror wasn't you? What if your reflection whispered secrets you weren't supposed to hear, or showed you things that hadn't even happened yet? This is the story of the Blackwood Farm, a story so unsettling that by the end, you might never look at a mirror the same way again. It began on a rainy afternoon in late October. The Peterson family, Michael, his wife Sarah, their teenage daughter Emily, and their 8-year-old son, Jacob, were moving out of the city. The farmhouse had stood for nearly 2 centuries, its paint peeling, its shutters loose, but its price was impossible to beat. 5 acres of land, privacy, silence. To Michael, it was freedom. To Sarah, it was a fresh start. To Emily, it was exile. The air was damp, heavy with the smell of rotting leaves, when their moving truck groaned to a stop in front of the farmhouse. Emily was the first to notice. The house had too many windows. Long, narrow panes, some cracked, some fogged from the inside, reflecting the gray sky back at her. And in the upstairs window, just for a second, she swore she saw a figure standing there, pale, still, watching. When she blinked, it was gone. Inside, the house was dusty but intact. The wooden floors groaned like an old man's bones. The walls leaned ever so slightly inward, as though the house were listening. Jacob wandered first. "Mom, Dad, come see this." At the end of the hallway was an antique mirror nearly 8 feet tall, mounted in a heavy wooden frame carved with vines and roses. The glass wasn't smooth like modern mirrors. It rippled faintly, as though water had dried across its surface. Sarah frowned. "We should cover that until we clean it." But Jacob was already pressing his hands to the cold glass. "Look, my reflection, it's smiling." Michael laughed. "You're smiling too, kiddo." But Jacob shook his head. "No, I'm not." The first night passed uneventfully, except for the storm. Rain battered the windows until it sounded like fists pounding to be let inside. At breakfast, Sarah noticed Emily was pale. "Bad dreams again?" Emily stared into her cereal. "Not a dream. I woke up last night and I thought I saw someone walking past my door. In the mirror on my dresser." Michael, already late for work, waved it off. "We've been here one day. Everyone's just adjusting." But later that evening, when Sarah went to fetch laundry, she stopped at the tall mirror in the hallway. For just a second, her reflection didn't move with her. It happened 3 days later. Emily was brushing her hair in her room when she froze. Her reflection had stopped moving again. Slowly, in the mirror, her double raised one hand and pointed toward the closet. Behind her, Emily turned. Nothing, just a row of unpacked boxes. When she looked back at the mirror, her reflection was smiling. That night, Emily refused to sleep with the lights off. Meanwhile, Jacob had begun talking to the mirror in the hallway. Sarah found him whispering to it, his tiny hand pressed flat against the glass. "Sweetheart, what are you doing?" "She tells me secrets," Jacob said. Sarah froze. "Who does?" "My reflection. She says things will happen before they happen. And then, they do." Sarah tried to laugh, but her skin crawled. "What kinds of things?" Jacob's eyes were serious. "She said a bird would hit my window. And this morning, it did. It broke its neck." That same evening, while Michael was shaving, he leaned into the bathroom mirror. For a moment, he swore he saw blood dripping from his own eyes in the reflection. He staggered back. Nothing, just his tired face. But when he returned to the bedroom, Sarah gasped. "Michael, your eyes, they're bleeding." 2 thin trails of crimson slid from the corners of his eyes down his cheeks. By the second week, the mirrors were no longer just misbehaving. They were showing the future, and the future was horrifying. Emily woke up screaming. Her dresser mirror had shown her something. Herself, running through the house, her face pale with terror. Something was chasing her, though the glass had warped. "Too much to see, what?" She begged her parents to listen. Michael slammed his fist on the table. "This is ridiculous. They're just mirrors, old glass. You're all feeding into this hysteria." But later that night, when Michael walked past the hallway mirror, he froze. It showed Sarah standing over his body, holding a kitchen knife. Sarah became obsessed. She draped sheets over every mirror, but somehow in the morning, the covers were always gone. One evening, she swore she heard whispering. When she leaned close to the mirror, her own reflection leaned closer too, lips moving. It whispered her name. Then it whispered, Jacob's. 2 days later, tragedy struck. Jacob had been playing near the pond when Sarah called him inside. Minutes later, the glass door's reflection showed Jacob still outside, standing on the edge of the pond, staring into the water. Panicked, Sarah ran outside. But Jacob was already waist-deep in the pond, eyes glassy, arms outstretched as if pulled by invisible hands. They dragged him out coughing, shivering, screaming. She told me to come in. She said there's someone trapped down there who needs me. When Michael demanded who told him that, Jacob only pointed back at the house, at the mirrors. The Peterson family was unraveling. Michael drank at night to sleep. Sarah avoided mirrors entirely. Emily refused to be alone, but the mirrors would not be ignored. It began with a sound. Midnight. Rain hammering the roof. Wind howling through the cracks. Then, footsteps in the hallway. Emily peeked out of her room and gasped. Her parents were already there, staring. Every single mirror in the house, hallway, bathroom, bedrooms, was glowing faintly, like moonlight. Trapped inside, and in each one their reflections weren't mimicking them anymore. They were moving on their own, smiling, waving, beckoning. Michael shouted and smashed the hallway mirror with a hammer. Glass exploded across the floor. For a moment, silence. Then, every other mirror in the house cracked at once. From inside the shards, voices whispered. 1,000 whispers overlapping. Stay, stay, stay. Sarah grabbed the children and fled toward the front door. But the glass pane in the door now reflected something else entirely. The family's corpses hanging from the rafters. Jacob screamed. Emily fainted. Sarah dropped the keys. Michael forced the door open, but outside, the yard was wrong. It wasn't raining anymore. It wasn't even night. It was daylight. And in the yard, they could see themselves, another version of the Peterson family, standing perfectly still, watching. Each double wore a wide, unnatural smile. The next morning, neighbors reported hearing screams from the farmhouse, but when police arrived, they found the house empty. No blood. No bodies, just broken mirrors scattered across the floor, and in one surviving shard, half buried in dust, a reflection still lingered. Not of the empty room, but of the Peterson family, standing silently, smiling, trapped forever inside the glass. So, what do you think? Was the Peterson family cursed the moment they set foot in Blackwood Farm? Were the mirrors showing the future, or pulling them into a different one? Look in the mirror tonight. Look very closely. And if your reflection moves, before you do, run.